Okay, so now you should have in front of you a list of search results of scholarly peer-reviewed papers about a functional component and its effect on memory. So the next criteria that you want to use is to look through those search result pages for primary sources. So what's a primary source? Remember that image I showed you of the researcher working at the microscope? When somebody does an experiment and wants to publish the result, that's the primary source. When somebody else writes about their work, that's a secondary source because the author of the second paper was not directly involved in creating the knowledge. That's the difference. So secondary sources, which are also called review articles, have a very important place in science. What they will do is they will take a whole bunch of papers and they will go backwards and trace the history of what we know today about a particular topic, which if you are new to the field, like you are in this class, then you can, just by reading a review article, you can get one-sentence summaries of all of the work that's gone on to the date that that article was written. So it's a good way to bone up and get current up to a certain point, and then your reading that you need to do to bring it up to date is just of all those things that have happened since then. So it's a good summary, not too different from a term paper that you would write. So, but the issue is that when people write these summaries, they interpret them and they put them in the lens of whatever their point of view is. So it's not necessarily that they're biased, but they just have a perspective that may be different than yours. The other thing that we're going to do is, in order to evaluate whether a claim is valid or not, we're going to actually count the number of studies. So when you repeat something and get the same results as somebody else, that is a measure of quality, that the conclusions are reliable, and the more that it's repeated, the better. So in order to do that counting function, you have to actually be looking at primary sources, not at somebody else writing about them. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is now go through that source list and that list of results and see if we can find primary sources from them. How do you tell? So the way that you tell is by actually looking at the structure of the paper itself. Remember that primary sources are reporting the results of experiments, and in order to do that, they have to describe how they did their experiments. Review articles, secondary literature, will not describe their experiments because they didn't do one. They can't describe it. They might just say a little bit about the method, but they don't have to go into the real heavy-duty detail that would allow somebody else to repeat it. So if a paper has a materials and methods section, it is a primary source. That's one way to tell. Secondary sources, because they synthesize conclusions from multiple sources, they will have no method sections, and of course because they never did an experiment, they're not reporting on the results. Instead, the way that they're organized is there will be headings that have topics. You might see some graphs in them, but not as many, and mostly what you will see is them talking about other people's articles with in-text citations that tell you which paper they're talking about. So You would look for the absence of a method section, look for the absence of a results section, and usually, sometimes, they will have something in the title itself that either directly says, hey, this is a review article, or something about the topic where it's not the effect of this and this and this, but instead just a general topic, dioxins, an overview, or vitamin E in prostate cancer, where are we today? If you're reporting the results of your experiments, you wouldn't say it that way. Okay. So what I want you to do is, using that criteria, go through and find one review article and one primary article in your results list. Now, one extra thing that I can do to help you, this is kind of tough. Let's see, screen, switch programs. Okay, so I'm going to go to my results page here. Is after you open up the the abstract, sometimes you can go in here and they will tell you publication type. So here it says clinical trial. And sometimes here it will say opinion, or it will say review. Okay. And then in the abstract too, you'll see there's the results section. That means that this is a primary source. Even though this doesn't say materials and methods, you can see that what they're doing is describing how they did the experiment. All right, another trick that you can use is that with EBSCO, let's go back to the search page here, you can actually tell the program what type of study that you want. Okay, so if you wanted to publication type, okay, case reports, clinical trials, controlled clinical trial, and there's a separate category for review. All right, so here. So one thing that you can do is, if you want to get rid of the review articles, if you want to just look at review articles, you can type and review and then select publication type. Okay, P. Where'd that go? Publication type. Maybe it's under TI. Where'd that go? There it is, publication type PT, and just execute that. Or if you want to get rid of the review articles, you could do not, and hopefully that will remove all of those that are explicitly that way. All right, so once again, what I want you to do is to find one review article and one primary article in your results list. Okay, so now I want you to look at that primary source that you found. And we're going to apply the next criteria. Is the study that you're looking at a clinical trial or a correlation study? What you want is, you only want to rely on clinical trials, because they're the only ones, the type of study, that can actually prove that nutritional intervention has some effect on health. So there is a table in your textbook, table 1.5, and what it does is it goes through a description of the different types of studies that are used in nutrition research. Okay, epidemiological studies, case control studies are correlational. You can get correlations from them, and then clinical trials are separate. Animal studies and cell culture studies are usually experiments, but they're done in non-humans, or they're done with cells taken from a human, which is not the intact system. So there are limitations on what you can conclude from those. Okay, so what I want you to do is to go to table 1.5, review these definitions, and take a look at that article, that primary source that you found, and decide what type of study is. Is it a clinical trial or is it a correlational study? So, okay, so at this point we're going to go on to the next video, which is explaining why it is that clinical trials are better than correlational studies.